Okay. I knew something was in the works, but I am not in charge of it, so I trust the people that are working on this. Yeah. Yeah. Just get all the best.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I'd like to talk to you sometime too about November.
Okay. Yeah, drop me an email.
It would be nice to have some people on by.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, email me.
I will. I will.
Good morning. Are you guys ready to finish Genesis? The end of the beginning, as it were? Okay, cool. Yeah, so Genesis chapter 48 is where we've left off. And so we'll go through this. We'll also have some maybe recapping of some other stuff we've talked about over the whole of the course, and then we'll take a look at what we're going to be doing starting for the next few weeks in May. So sound good? Cool. All right. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you that you have walked us through this first book of your word. We thank you for all the ways you have shown us that you have been faithful to your people and the promise that you have made to your people of the rescue that you will bring into our world. We pray that you would guide us in our conversation today, bless us in the study of your word, and send us out as people of joy, confident in your promise in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so Genesis 48. Geographically, where are we at? Egypt, right? So Joseph has been there for many years now. He has had this whole thing with his brothers. You've heard all that. And now the whole family of Israel has now been brought down to good land in Egypt, where they are under kind of the blessing of the Pharaoh, more importantly, under God's blessing. And so they're now there, they're situated, all this, and there's a number of years that Jacob will live in Egypt after coming down. It's not like he came down and then died right away. So we're going to hear about the rest of Jacob's life today, and then also Joseph, and hear about kind of what happens with everybody there. So, Genesis 48. Any questions before we start? Okay. After this, so again, after everybody's come down, Jacob has met with Pharaoh and had the blessed Pharaoh, and then kind of has his own place there. So some years later, after this, Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, "Your son Joseph has come to you." Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession.'" All right, so not much longer left, not much time left in Jacob's life. So he brings his beloved son Joseph to him with Joseph's sons. And who are those 2 sons we hear about here? Manasseh and Ephraim. All right, so they have come here, and they are going to be meeting with Dad and Grandpa here. Imagine maybe at this point Manasseh and Ephraim are younger, but they all come in, and Jacob says God blessed him at Luz in the land of Canaan. What was that? Because we heard about that seemingly a long time ago. Because there was another name for this place, Luz. Bethel, house of God. Because Jacob gave it a new name based on what happened there. Who remembers what happened there way back when? Yes. So Jacob's ladder, right, or the stairway, the ladder, where he has this vision of the angels going up and down, and either God up above the ladder or God standing with him at the base ladder. Because when does he have this vision in terms of what's happening in the narrative of history? Is this he's coming back? When he's what? When he's leaving, right? So this is right after he's left home. Why does he leave home? No. This is ostensibly he's going to find a wife, but he's his brother. Who's Jacob's brother? Esau. And what does Esau want to do? Kill him. So it seems like that was so long ago, right? But so he was leaving the land that he had grown up in to ostensibly go find a wife, which he will do, but he's fleeing from his brother's wrath as well. And why does his brother want to kill him? Because he's tricked him. He's the tricky trickster, right? So all right, so this is all coming back. So now Jacob, at the very end of his life, is going back and remembering what happened all those years ago, and he is telling this to his beloved son Joseph. Okay? All right, so there was that blessing, and that blessing, "Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession." So that land of Canaan. Okay. "And now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They should be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Paddan to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. So, what is Jacob doing with respect to his grandsons here, Manasseh and Ephraim? What's that? Making them heirs of whom? Of Jacob. He is elevating these grandsons to the place of sons with respect to the rest of his children, the rest of his sons. Okay? So Manasseh and Ephraim are getting elevated. So from grandsons to be considered as sons. Now, this matters if you look at the longer story here, because how many tribes are there of Israel? There are 12 tribes, right? And 2 of those tribes are Manasseh and Ephraim. There's no tribe of Jacob. So they get elevated. We'll talk about the other ones too when we get a little bit farther along here in Genesis. But so just remember this now. So they're being elevated. Okay. So we heard about Rachel's death and burial in Canaan. Rachel was not buried at kind of the family burial place, because remember, Abraham way back when had the burial place for Sarah. He was buried there. Then Isaac and Rebekah were buried there, and Leah was buried there, that family place. But Rachel's place was different. So now Genesis 48:8. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Now remember, we're going to hear here in a little bit. Jacob is really old and can't see that well. So Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees and bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards his father's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. Why does that matter? So he's got the oldest and the youngest, right? So he's looking to put the oldest, who's in his left hand, in his father's right hand, and the younger in his father's left hand. Because if there's going to be a blessing, it makes sense the oldest goes to the right hand, gets the blessing, right? So that's what Joseph is doing here, right? So he's going to put his sons in his father's hands for this blessing. And Israel, Jacob, right, stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the hand of Manasseh, crossing his hands. For Manasseh was the firstborn. So he's like this. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys, and in them let my name be carried on, in the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." So he is pronouncing this blessing before he dies. Thus he put skip down a little bit, sorry. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to put it on Manasseh's head, right? Because apparently Dad, with his bad eyesight, is confused here, and I need to correct him so that he's blessing with the right hand the older son, right? Okay. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed him that day, saying, by you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. When has God ever taken a younger son and put him before the older son? Have you read Genesis? Right? So how many times has this happened? Several times is the appropriate answer, yes, right? God is doing the unexpected things, or the blessing is going here in an unexpected way. Okay. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you, rather than to your brothers, one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. So there's this special bequeathment given to Joseph here for this place that, as far as we know, this could be the place where he ultimately would be buried, the place where there was the buying of land, and then the whole thing with later on the rape of Dinah and the massacring of these Amorites with the sword and the bow, and so we'll talk more about that in a minute here. All right. So there's that special bequeathment there. Okay. Any questions for 48? Because we roll right into 49. Okay. Then Jacob called his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in the days to come. So Jacob is about to die, and so these are going to be his last words of blessing and looking ahead for his sons. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the firstfruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So what is he talking about here as he is speaking to his oldest son, Reuben? So these are blessings, right? So he's saying that he's the preeminent one, he's the firstborn, all that, but because he is, how stable is water? Not so much. It's always changing, right? Unless it's frozen, but then it's ice. But water, always changing. And then he says this thing here about, you went up to your father's bed and defiled it. What's he talking about there? We've discussed it. Yes. He slept with one of the concubines, with Bilhah, right? And had been trying to live that down ever since, it seemed, trying to do things to try to win back his father's favor. But even now on his deathbed, Jacob remembers. And so Reuben has lost that place of preeminence because of what he has done. All right, next brothers. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel, O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So these two brothers, Simeon and Levi, what did they do that we heard about a long while back after their sister Dinah had been raped? They set up this whole plan. They didn't just kill them, right? They said, "Oh no, if you want to marry our sister, well then you all need to be circumcised like us." And because it was the principal people of the town, all the men of the town were circumcised. And while they were recovering, then, yes, Simeon and Levi come in and kill them all, massacre them. And apparently, this isn't the only time, though, that they have done something rash or violent. Jacob is talking back to that as well, but he's saying because of the violence that they do, maybe they're belligerent guys, they will be divided amongst the people. So they're not going to have their tribes. When the lands are apportioned, right? They get divided out so that they don't dominate the rest of the tribes when they all go back to the promised land. So again, looking ahead to what happens many, many years in the future there. All right, now, big blessing. Judah. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion and as a lioness who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. So lots of compliments and good things said there too. But what's the big deal about Judah? Think ahead. So Judah, right, is going to be the land from which the Messiah is going to be coming, in terms of looking at the Jerusalem, right, is going to be in Judah. Judah is going to be that southern kingdom. It's going to be the land that is going to be the blessing for the world. But through the line of Judah, these great things are coming. Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Now, fun little fact is Zebulun isn't actually at the shore. It doesn't actually go up to the Mediterranean, but is near. So trading that would happen from the sea would go through Zebulun. So there's a bunch of stuff that is connected to the sea, even if it's not directly bordering the sea there. Issachar is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good and the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant at forced labor. So strong, but he would be working for others. Don't exactly know what that would mean. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. So there's positive stuff. There's concern here for Dan and for his descendants. Jacob has this prayer for his children, so that God ultimately will provide for them and keep them. So he's not just saying everything's going to be great, but he's entrusting them to God's care. Raiders, 49:19. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Now the name Gad, it sounds like it has the same root as the Hebrew word for raiders and raid. So kind of, again, wordplay stuff going in there. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. So there's prosperity, there's joy, and happiness in there. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. So Naphtali is going to be up in the north, lots of natural resources and things, kind of looking ahead. And now, big blessing for Joseph. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who is set apart from his brothers. So all this being given to the beloved son here, the longest, I think it is the longest of the blessings, right? It's even longer than Judah's blessing. So again, all these things. And there's lots of references to God in here too in this blessing, right? A lot of different names, different titles being applied in this one relating to Joseph. And then verse 27, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and evening dividing the spoil. So these descendants of Benjamin being aggressive warriors. Okay, so all those blessings, verse 28. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with a blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephraim the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. So there's Jacob. So we've kind of, from the beginning, right? We heard when he was born, he came out grabbing at his brother's heel. And now we have, as he is, breathes his last and is gathered to his people. So any questions from what we've gone through? So you've got the blessings for the brothers, looking ahead to the promises that will happen. They'll be fulfilled as the people are then restored back to the land many generations later. You've got kind of what, with Jacob's instruction to his children that he is not to be buried in Egypt, but to be buried back in the land of the promise. Is that connection with the land? Any questions on any of those things? All right. Chapter 50. The final chapter. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. So this 70 days thing is kind of, think about if we have somebody who dies and is recognized by the government, and so they lie in state, that kind of thing. So kind of there's this official period of mourning, but it's not given to just anybody, right? There's for somebody that is recognized as important. So here, the Egyptians are recognizing Joseph's father as he's with this high honor of this period of mourning for 70 days. And he's embalmed, right, so that he can make this journey back to Canaan. And I did check. I went back and checked on this, on the distance between Egypt and Israel. It is, in fact, if you are traveling as the crow flies or as people are traveling on foot, it is like 250, 300 miles. You get up to like 700 miles if you have to go through the checkpoint modern day, going from here to here, and it's like this roundabout thing. So there we go. So it's not like crazy long distance, but manageable. It's still a long distance for people traveling in a caravan. But it's still, if you have a dead body with you, you want it to be preserved, right? So yeah. So then they are going to make sure that they keep this promise to their father to have him buried in the land that his forefathers have been buried in, this land, the land where he is looking ahead to people going back to. Okay. There's no refrigeration. No, not so much. Okay, where were we? Okay, so when the days of weeping for Jacob were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. In my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return." And Pharaoh answered, "Go up and bury your father as he made you swear." So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. So imagine what this looks like. I mean, this is a massive group that's now going out from Egypt to go for this burial. And it's gonna be, some time to travel these hundreds of miles. So they go with this company. They come to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. They lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation, and he made mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians." Therefore, the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Abel Mizraim is, what is it, like a place of mourning, right? Is the mourning of Egypt. So they see all these Egyptians come out, this great company, and then camped out there for a week and having this lamentation, and so they're like, this is weird. Yeah. Yeah.
All of Egypt mourned 70 days, but Joseph only mourned 7. Was that in addition to the 70?
It's addition, yeah. So they had this mourning in Egypt before they left, and then go out after the 70 days of the weeping, kind of the official state mourning. Then they go out, and then as they're on their way, we're not exactly sure where the threshing floor of Atad is. It could be someplace that's either east of the Jordan or on the way as they're crossing into Canaan. But that's the additional 7 days they kind of set up there for that additional mourning. Okay, so we got there at verse 12. Thus, Jacob's sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. So quite the funeral procession. So they do that, and then they come back to Egypt. Verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him." Still something that's on their minds. Because apparently, either A, wanting to kill your brother, or B, deciding, well, maybe we won't kill him, we'll just sell him into slavery, is something that sticks around in somebody's mind. So here's their plan, right? Say to Joseph, they send a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. So the brothers, right, what are they doing here? It's kind of this deception. I don't know if this is actually something that happened, if Jacob wanted to make sure the boys were okay, or if they decided, we should say that dear old Dad, you remember Dad, he had this request for you to make sure that you forgive us. But, So there's that. But the brothers are acknowledging their guilt, right? So they're asking for forgiveness. They want this to be settled, right? So they're asking for this forgiveness. So Joseph weeps when they speak to him, because again, you have remembering all this there. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." So again, that the dreams of his youth being fulfilled. Now, okay, listen to this. But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God?" Here's the thing, and if you take a look at the Hebrew here, the ESV does a pretty good job with this, but the Hebrew is like, it's more like this is stated as a rhetorical question, because is he in the place of God with judgment over them? Yes, because he's in charge of Egypt. So, yeah, should they be afraid? Well, I mean, rightfully, yes, they should be terrified because dear old dad is gone. And Joseph could enact vengeance, but he doesn't. He does not. Again, he demonstrates God's graciousness and that forgiveness. So, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? Yeah. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Who does God keep alive through Joseph? His family, the people of Egypt, other people who are coming to Egypt to buy. So yes, God has worked through this thing that they meant for evil and used it to do great good. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Verse 22. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. So Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. So there's only two people recorded being embalmed in the scriptures. We just heard both of them. And so take a look at this, right? Joseph lived 110 years. He was about 50 or so when his father died. So the last 60 years of Joseph's life, we don't really hear anything about. Just here at the end. But he makes his brothers, his family, promise to do what? Take my bones and bury them back in the land of my fathers. Because what's going to happen? What's going to happen in the future, in generations to come? Are they going to live in Egypt forever? No. God is going to visit you, and he is going to bring you out to the land of the promise. So looking ahead, even here at the very end of Joseph's life, it's looking ahead. Now, a couple things with this too before we kind of get into our overall review, right? We have the remembering of the promise that this is we're going to be restored back to the land, and the promise. So as Jacob gave it to Joseph, as he remembered what had been told him back at Bethel, as Jacob was leaving the land, like we talked about at the beginning of this session, right? What is the promise that God has given to Abraham and his descendants. There are three parts of it, right? What were the three parts of this promise that for Abraham and his children? What's that? There'll be many. There'll be a great. So there'll be many, as numerous as the sands of the seashore, right, or the stars in the sky. So there's going to be a great nation coming from Abraham. So that's the first part. The second part, that they will have a kingdom, they'll have a land, a country to dwell in of their own. So that part's not fulfilled yet, but they're looking ahead in the promise. And then there's a third part, that from Abraham and his children will come what? The Messiah, or as is referred to, a blessing for the nations. So that three-part promise there. So it hasn't exactly been, none of it has been fulfilled exactly yet by this point at the end of Genesis, right? But as the people are there in Egypt, God is going to be making them prosperous and going to be making them a great nation. So we're looking ahead there. They're going to come out from Egypt in the years to come, and they're going to be restored to the land of the promise. So they'll have that land of their own. So that's part 2. And then part 3, that's going to be many years later, right? Because what's the blessing for the nations? Jesus, right. If there's ever doubt, just say Jesus. Right. Jesus. So that's that blessing. So, okay. So this is, any questions on kind of what we've read in these last few chapters here, closing out Genesis? Because we're going to spend some time doing some review here. Well, he was 147, right, when he died. And that was about 60 years, or 50 years, so probably getting close to 100, it sounds like, because he had all those sons in between. Maybe a little bit younger than that, but still, because both he and Benjamin were thought of as children of his older age, because for a long time Rebekah hadn't been able to have children. Not Rebekah, Rachel, sorry. So yeah, we'd have to look, and I'm sure there's a chart someplace that has it all listed. Okay, any questions with the sons, the blessings? Okay, all right. So let's look at all of this book of Genesis, because what is Genesis about? If you remember all the way back to when we started. Wait, what are we at? The history of the people. Who are the people? The people of Israel. But who else is the people? We are. Right? This is our history. Because this is God from the beginning, right? Creating. Everything is perfect. Because remember, all the way back, Genesis 1 and 2, those are all prologue. God created everything, and it was good. And not just good, it was very good. And then chapter 3, in the fall, not good. Broken. And everything else that happens in the rest of the Bible is what God is doing to address that problem. So what we're hearing throughout Genesis from chapter 3 onward is God's salvation history. It's our history. It's going back to those people, because remember, we hear about all those generations being born. You heard, I'm not going to go back and say all the names again, right? All these descendants of whoever begat whoever and all that. But there continued to be a focus, right? It wasn't just, all right, we're going to follow everybody. There was a line, right? And who's that line heading to? Ultimately to Jesus, right? So we get down to Abraham, right? And then God choosing Abraham, God declaring Abraham to be his chosen one that's going to be going out, and then through him, going to be making the great nation from him, going to be giving them a land. The blessing for all the nations is going to be coming through him. Those three promises, right? Those three aspects of it. And so the blessing's happening, all this is happening. We're seeing then through Abraham and his descendants, through Isaac, through Jacob, whose name is changed to what? Israel, struggles with God, wrestles with God. And then through his descendants, that we have these 12 tribes of Israel. So through the sons, through the grandsons that are elevated up to the status, some of the sons don't get land because of stuff that they have done, or they won't have tribes that are going to be having those territories. And then you're going to have some like Levi that are going to be priests in the nation. But all that's looking ahead. So that's hundreds of years what's coming down the line. But we see through all this God's promise continually. Surprisingly, it's not going to the people that we expect. Because what does God often do? Chooses not the firstborn, but the second, or another one, right? So that it's not going according to human expectation. But God is still working to bring about this plan to fulfill the promises that ultimately are fulfilled in Jesus. And then it goes out from there to all the nations. So any questions, thoughts, comments, discussion, stuff like that as we wrap up Genesis before we move on to a discussion of what's to come for us here? Anybody learn anything over these past however many weeks? One or two things maybe? Hopefully you had some fun. There's a lot of great stuff here that's in Genesis, and some things we just don't even think about. They definitely don't show up in the readings in the lectionary over the 1 year or the 3 year lectionary, but it's all part of this being, it's real history, real people who make mistakes, people who are in need of forgiveness, people who do forgive and receive forgiveness. Yeah.
This is kind of looking at what's coming, but did the people in the family limit who they married in order to keep the identity of the tribe, or was that not?
Well, as we heard, sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they look at Esau, right? He marries the two Canaanite women, and they make life difficult for his mom and his family. And then he's like, oh, I want to try to get in good favor with my dad again. So what's he do? He marries a third wife, who's of the family, more of the family line. As it goes into the future, there's going to be intermarrying that's going on, but there's always amongst the line, right, a remembering of identity and remembering calling back to being children of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, so that ancestry is important. And we see that very much so when we even get to the New Testament era, people reckoning themselves as descendants of Abraham, children of Abraham, and how important that is to be that, especially after the exile, which that's a whole nother thing. Because this is one of the reasons that after the exile, right, the people come back, resettle in the land. Did everybody get taken away in the exile? No. Who got to stay behind? The poor. The people that, well, they're not a threat. They're not worth taking into exile, right? And those people intermarried with others. Like in the northern kingdom, right, that would eventually become Samaria. So one of the reasons that Samaritans were looked down upon by the Jews in Jesus' day was because they were people who, wouldn't have been taken to exile, but also they intermarried with the people of the land. And there's a whole bunch of history with that too. So yeah, so some focus very much on it, others not as important. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, Warren. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these concubines rather than wives. So it was they had a recognized place in the household as kind of if you want to use maybe a more colloquial modern term of like baby mamas for Jacob, right? So they were not just kind of out there, but they were still part of the family because why did Reuben get in trouble? Because he laid with the concubine, one of his father's. So they had a place in the household. So it was still a betrayal there. So yeah, it's not. That's again. How did they get to be concubines? Well, the wives, Leah and Rachel, which again, the whole thing of the two wives there, that was problematic in the first place, resulting from deception and deception. But they wanted to have more kids, or wanted to give Jacob more kids, so they gave him their servants to be his concubines. All that, people just trying to like, oh no, we can totally fix this, right? We can totally do, if God wants him to have lots of kids, well, here's what we're going to do to make that happen. What's the problem in that? There's too much we, or too much what I'm going to do, right? And not the trust, but yeah, Jen. Oh, exactly. It was. So you want to do it in human perspective, you do whatever you can to make that happen. Because you need a large family, one, to have people to work either the flocks or the fields and to help protect you. It's better to have a large family to protect yourself in case there's people that are coming to take stuff from you, right? But again, it's trusting in what we think our human way of doing things is as opposed to God's provision. Okay. All right. So, Genesis. Check. All right. Come back to that again at some point there in the future. Looking ahead, I talked to you guys last week and said one of the ideas of something we could do for the next few weeks here in May before you go on a summer break is to kind of maybe do a little bit of a follow-up from what we've talked about in Genesis. So now that the people are in the land of Egypt, in Goshen, and next thing we have in Exodus chapter 1 is that there's this great multiplication of the people of Egypt, or the people in Egypt, but then there arises a new king, a new Pharaoh, who doesn't remember Joseph, and then views the people of the Hebrew people as a threat, and so enslaves them and puts all these harsh things on them. So they call out for deliverance and rescue. So I think you guys have done some of these before, but Ray Vanderlaan, right, is an educator who has taken people on tours in Egypt, Mediterranean area, the Holy Land. So you see some of the historical things. You get a better historical context for a lot of things. So there are a couple of these different series that we have. So if that might sound like something that's interesting, there's a couple of potential studies that he has done that could work for this. One of them is kind of a review of the lands and the situation and the culture in Egypt leading into the Exodus. And that's a 5-session study. You don't have to do all 5, but we could combine some videos and things like that. So there's that one, and then there's another one, which is kind of after the Exodus proper, but more of like going through the Sinai and the wilderness and kind of that period of the wanderings heading into the Promised Land. So do you guys have a preference? Does that sound like something you'd want to do with seeing those videos? Okay. The first one with kind of, okay. Does that sound good? So we'll make plans to get that together. I'm trying to remember that's not the one that I have right here, but I'm trying to remember what the title is, but we'll let you know. So anyway, we can start that one on and have that shared. Now, I don't know if we can stream that one because it's like copyrighted material. I don't know if we can stream, so I'll have to check on that. And if not, I'll send you guys links so you can maybe watch some stuff online or something like that. But if you're joining us online today, but we'll have that today or next week. We'll pick that up, and there's 5 sessions in that, and I think we have 3 additional Wednesdays left in May. Does that sound right? I'm trying to, where's my calendar thing here? Yeah, 11. Yep. Okay, yeah. So we'd have 3 more Wednesdays in May. So we'll figure that out and let you guys know. But sounds like it'll be fun. Cool. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, any things like that? After the flashback service at 11, the senior luncheon will be happening here. I think Irma I saw her already with her chef's toque on in there and getting ready with that. So that will be happening here around, I think we're saying like 11:30 start time-ish, if anybody's coming to that. So, okay. Irma, is it like 11:30-ish, 11:45? Yeah. 11:45? Whenever, okay. Fair enough, all right. Yep.
Another announcement, Joy is going to be the 20th. It's going to be a potluck, and we're going to have fried chicken,
Ooh.
$5 a piece, and let me know who's coming.
So Friday, May 20th, for the Joy gathering there, potluck with fried chicken. Need a head count, okay. Now, have you ever had Korean fried chicken? It is the best. There's actually, yeah, fair enough. Pacemaker probably does not have in its repertoire, but if you want to have some of the best fried chicken, there's a new restaurant up on Riverside in Rockford. What's nearby there? You know where Greenfire is? Kind of over there, a little bit down from there, in Pomodoro, that Italian place, kind of just is right next to the Beefaroo. So if you know where the Beefaroo is, up on Riverside, just across the street from the Beefaroo on the north side of Riverside, there's a Korean barbecue and chicken place, KBQ Loves Park, I think is it's called. And they have the Korean fried chicken, which is fantastic. It's like double fried. So the outside's super crispy and the inside is very nice. So anyway, if you want to try out something new, have a reservation. I don't think they're open for lunch, but dinner, but they're pretty busy. But it's great stuff. Great stuff. But I'm sure the Joy barbecue or fried chicken is also going to be tasty. So very good. Anything else? Yes, Jan. Yeah. You are very welcome. It's my pleasure. This is one of the fun things I get to do here. So I have a number of fun things I get to do, which I'm glad for. Cool. All right, well, go with God's peace, and we'll see you as we pick up our new topic next week.